Okay, last section of 5.4 in standard form. So just reviewing our target for this is learning target 5, and this should say C. I can write standard or equations in standard form, so we're just going to remember that standard form is ax plus by equals c. And then just a reminder that we can have no fractions, which also means no decimals. Okay, so no fractions, no decimals. And so we're just going to take a look at some word problems. In example 1 here, we have your class is taking a trip to the public library. You can travel in small and large vans. A small van holds 8 people, a large van holds 12 people, and your class should fill 15 small vans and 2 large vans. If we needed to write an equation in standard form that models the possible combinations of small vans and large vans that your class could fill, we are going to use this information to write those equations. Alright, and when we're writing this equation, there's a couple things that we need to keep in mind. So I'm going to go through and kind of highlight what I know. I know that a small van holds 8 people, a large van holds 12 people. So when I write part of my equation, you have to decide what are your x and y values going to represent. So in this case, I have to write down what are my x and y values going to represent. And for me, I'm just going to say x represents small vans, and y is going to represent the large vans. And again, that's completely up to you, picking x and y. There is no right or wrong answer for that. But it is important that you remember which one is which, so that when we write our equation, so for example, my equation, if my small vans are x, so my small vans hold 8 people, so I have 8x plus my large vans hold 12 people. So then I have So then I have 12y equals, and I don't know how many people are in my class just yet, so I'm going to write T for total number of people in class. Okay, that unknown, I'm going to use this information right here. They tell me that my class can hold 15 small vans and 2 large vans. That right there tells me an ordered pair. And I know x, which is this first one, is my small vans. So I have 15 small vans, and that leaves 2 large vans for your y. So what I'm going to do is use that ordered pair and plug it into this equation I just wrote. So I have 8 times 15 plus 12 times 2 equals T, the total number of people I have in class. And I'm just going to solve that to figure out what is T. So that gives me 120. So 120 plus 24 equals T. So I have 144 equals T. So my final equation is going to be 8x plus 12y equals 144. And that is going to represent how I can fill those large and small vans. And we're going to use that for B here when we have to graph this equation from part A. When you graph using standard form, you might recall back to, I believe it was in chapter 4 when we found our intercepts. When we found intercepts, if you have an equation that is already written in this format, we can solve for the x and y intercept. So I'm going to use this equation in part B here, and I have to solve for my x-intercept and my y-intercept. So this is like review. Okay, so if you recall, when we solve for an x-intercept, we are going to so I'm just going to write that notation here, let y equals 0. So when I write that, I'm going to keep my x, so I have 8x plus 12 times 0 equals 144. One way that helps me remember where to put that 0 is on the top here. When I label this x-intercept, that tells me that in my equation I write, I need only the variable x. That means the other variable disappears. So really 12 times 0 is 0. So I can just cross that out, and I'm left with 8x equals 144. And now, let's see if I can fit this, x equals 18. So I'm halfway there. So that's my x-intercept. My y-intercept, that means a different color so that it fits on here. I'm going to split this up a little bit so that they don't get confused. But I'm going to, now for my y-intercept, let x equal 0. So when I rewrite that, again, it helps me remember if I want to solve for my y, that's the only variable I want. So I'm going to write 8 times 0 plus 12y equals 144. And now when I solve, 8 times 0 is 0. I have 12y equals 144. Divide both sides by 12. I'm left with y equals 12. Now that I have those two intercepts, like x-intercept and a y-intercept, I'm going to bring that over to this graph here. And so what I need to keep is that x equals 18 and y equals 12. So what I'm going to do, just because I can't fit it on here, I'm going to rewrite that right here so I remember that. So x is 18, y is 12. And I have to remember that these are intercepts. So if you recall back, our intercepts are specific spots on that graph. So in this case, my x-intercept is where my line crosses the x-axis. So I have to count, first of all, and see how many lines I have. So 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I only have 10. So I'm going to count by 2's to try and get these to fit. So I have to label this. So this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 18. And again, I'm going to count by 2's vertically. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 14, 18. So when I graph these, my x-intercept is at 18. So on this x-axis, the one that goes across here, on this x-axis, I'm going to find 18. And I'm going to put my point right there. That's my x-axis. On my y-axis, I'm going to find 12 and put my point right here. And then what you're going to do is use a straight edge or something as straight as possible. On the iPads, it's a little harder, but we're going to connect those. So the other question I may have for you is, can this line go past your x or y intercept? So should I extend it past that x and y intercept? So think about that for a second. A couple questions you can ask yourself when you're graphing these yourself is, can you have negative amounts of buses, right? Because these represent, X represented, I'm going to zoom back out again, going back to example A there, X were our small vans, so these were our small vans, and these were our large vans. And can we have a negative number of vans? Not really, you just won't order any. You don't have a negative number. So we aren't going to extend that line. If you do extend it, it is incorrect. Now for our last example here, it says, for C, list 2 possible combinations. All that means is when I zoom into this graph here, and again I have to remember X are small vans, Y are large vans, and I'm going to use this line I just drew to predict some other possible combinations. So for example, this is possible right here. That point, so that is 16. So I'm going to say 16. See, I'm going to try and get a thicker pen there so that you can actually see that. Okay, so you could have 16 small vans. And how many large vans? That would be 2 large vans. You could pick, just estimate, you could probably pick this one right here. So again, you want to pick ones that are in corners. So if I were to read that one, I don't have to guess in between. You can't really have half of a van. So we could order 6 small vans. And again, I'm just following this straight down and seeing what X value is at. And again, I'm going to follow this straight over, and so my large vans is 8. So I have 8 large. On a test or quiz, you may be asked to just find one other possible solution, maybe 2, but please make sure you put a box around it so we can clearly see what your answer is. If you got stuck on any of this, please still take down the notes, and then when you come back to class tomorrow, we're going to be practicing solving for some of these intercepts and rearranging some equations, so please feel free to ask questions during practice tomorrow. We are going to not complete that second word problem, and we will work on that one tomorrow in class as well. Alrighty, so if you need to go back and review anything, go for it. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow.